Hi everyone, and welcome to day 43 of this artificial intelligence project where we're trying to make AI more accessible to more people. All right, so today we're gonna cover new functionalities that we're adding with SQLite using WebAssembly. So just a quick recap, this is how the application looks like. It's kind of like a drag and drop application that you can use on desktop, tablets, mobile, and why not. And yeah, basically you can just yesterday we were reviewing charts and why not. But the idea is that you can do some artificial intelligence, like workflows without the need to actually code. Anyway, so yesterday we were also talking about different types of databases. And the specific problem that I'm trying to solve is how to add support for more transformations of data. Some of the listeners of this channel have mentioned that a lot of times you need to clean up data, a lot of times the data needs to get transformed, and why not? Anyways, so yesterday we explored DocDB, but we found out that DocDB is not ready for prime time yet to be used with WebAssembly. So today I took a look back at the obvious choice, which is SQLite. And there's a project called SQLite compiled to JavaScript, and basically this project does add support for SQLite in using WebAssembly. And I was first of all quite surprised to find out that that's the case, because that makes our life quite easy. Like we can make use of something like SQLite. And so I spent the day taking a look at how we could use SQLite benefits, just thinking, figuring out if there's something better, which I couldn't find. And where I started is okay, what type of things can we do on SQLite? And right now we have, a simple moving average that we've coded a while ago. I can show it here just really fast. And we put together this simple moving average, but I wanted to see can we do something like this directly in SQLite, right? And in SQL in general. And I didn't try it, but I did find out that apparently you can also do moving average on SQLite, right? So this is interesting because some people have mentioned it's more people are familiar with SQL than with actual doing JavaScript transformations. So again, this is an exploration. I don't know if it's going to be on the final product, but the idea is that you can use SQL transformations. So after that, I start thinking of, okay, if we do SQLite in the browser, would I be able to use, say, SQLite properly on Swift on iPhone devices or iPads? And it seems to be that's the case. I mean, I look at this particular tutorial, and it seems that you can actually open, it actually seems to be the case that SQLite is supported natively in iOS, which is actually kind of cool. And we can also do the same for desktop, and why not? Now this is not something that I would implement as on the first version, but the idea would be if you're using this project on the web, with something like this, then you get you get the web version of SQLite. But if you were to using an iPad, you would get the actual full-on, or at least what the iPad and iOS supports for SQLite. And if you were on desktop, you could get a full-on SQLite database, right? And that could be actually pretty powerful. So again, it seems like there is support on Swift and in general on iOS for SQLite, which would be quite interesting. And then the other reason that I started thinking why SQLite would be interesting is that a lot of the big data sets, and here what we're looking at is Kaggle, and a lot of the data sets in Kaggle actually support SQLite. So when you have a pretty big data set in Kaggle, a lot of times what people are doing is just uploading the data set in SQLite format. So it would be actually quite nice to be able to load just a SQLite data set and then be able to transform it, and why not? Anyway, so you can search here for things that only have SQLite, and apparently there's quite a good amount of data sets available in this format. This is SQLite. Anyways, and then the last thing is that like I read a few blog posts on just specifically using SQLite in the browser with WebAssembly. And, like there's a few good write-ups and, like kind of that walk us and give us like a couple other points of view of whether this would be a good idea or not. Anyway, so basically the last thing that I did is I wrote down a prototype which looks as follows. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag like a SQL block. And this SQL block actually is defined with, it's basically, well, first of all, what I had to do was add support on the application for SQLite on, based of WebAssembly, at least for now. And then kind of like I made it available to all the scripts. And, this is very simple code. It's just kind of like inserting records. And then it's actually computing the same moving average that we were looking at on Stack Overflow. So yeah, basically kind of like what I found out is that, this works pretty well. We have here like the moving average getting computed for this very small data set. But the really important thing here is that it's getting computed using SQLite, right? So ideally, it's easier to write code like, that's, in some ways, it might be easier for people to write code that looks like this, which is just SQL code, as opposed to having to write code like this, which, by the way, it's kind of tricky to compute the simple moving average, like using a programming language, because you need to use kind of like a trick to, compute the sliding window efficiently. So yeah, like the idea is kind of like, well, maybe we use SQL's statements to actually let people expand the platform and, like do some of the transformations, and why not? All right, that's all I have for today, but let me go into a few comments since I haven't been catching up on comments. So the first one is from Carlos. And, Carlos is mentioning that thinking on fetching data into the application. Yeah, so far we're only using URL. So the question is like, can I use files that are locally stored in my computer? And the answer currently is no, but it's definitely on the top of my priority list. Obviously, like here we can drag a CSV file, and the problem is that it currently only supports a URL. We haven't added support for files, mostly because it's kind of like we know what we need to do in order to add support for files. So that's kind of like easy, but there's other, like the problem right now is that there's other unknowns. Like we don't fully know how to transform data and how to create those transformations anyways. So a lot of the work also that we're doing is a little bit exploratory. And at some point, not in the very distant future, we'll have to start heavily prioritizing the features that we want to get done for the alpha. And definitely one of the ones that we want is just being able to upload files. Right, from Carlos, another crazy idea. Yeah, what if you could not just share the output of the analysis, but also the pipeline that creates the whole analysis? Yeah, that's actually super interesting and powerful. So yeah, right now, I mean, here we have an actual pipeline, right? That is not doing anything interesting, but you can see the results. And a lot of the times the problem is like when I share this, this data, this chart, like there's no way of reproducing this chart, right? Unless you install all the dependencies, unless you, spend some time troubleshooting and have the right hardware resources, and why not? So kind of like here, Carlos' idea is that, like I can guarantee you that you have access to the actual processing of the data without having to, like rely on me, like on you believing me that I actually compute, that my environment computed the specific transformation correctly. And I think this is a great suggestion. It has a lot of potential. So for instance, I think another very interesting, almost corollary out of that is that, like if I share you my, like my entire pipeline, and, even the other thing that it enables you is to, like you can easily change the data by just plugging a different CSV file and actually see the results, right? Which, if I were to share, if I were to share just a chart, like you wouldn't able to make any changes to the actual chart, right? Or because you don't even have the transformations or the environment or whatever. So yeah, that's actually super powerful. So thanks, Carlos. Definitely we'll give it some thought and figure out how we can get there. And another comment from Carlos. Yeah, like yeah, we did reorganize a little bit the UI. I don't remember. Yeah, I don't remember mentioning what is the application, the format that the application can handle. Yeah, currently it's just CSV files. That's what we have here, CSVs. That's it. But yeah, again, this is another task that we have high in our priority list. We do want to add support for, say, JSON and maybe Excel files, just because those are well-known formats. However, it doesn't worry me adding those formats because mostly we know that we can add them. We just need to make the time. So yeah, it's one of those things that is definitely high on the priority list. But even higher than that on the priority list is figuring out what to build and scoping out the project. So yeah, it's high, but there's a few things that we need to kind of like narrow down before we get there. But yeah, we'll definitely make sure that there is support for using local files, adding support for JSON and Excel files, and also CSV files, or arbitrary delimited files. Right. Well, thank you so much. That's all I have for today. It's Friday, so I hope that you have a great week. I'll keep you posted and see you around.